Gallinar System. Gallinar is the home system of the League of Free Worlds. All planets within the system are loyal to the League, although a significant number of colonial assassins are known to be working within the system with the intention of destabilizing the uprising. Certain details regarding the organization and history of the League are withheld for security reasons. Other details may have been subject to data wiping by the Earth Empire, as Gallinar is regarded as the Earth's primary military target. Gallinar was colonized between 4405 and 4517 AD. The Forward to Gallinar group was founded in 4387 by a consortium of Earth's leading scientists and industrialists. They were concerned that the colonization program did not include sufficient investment in the creation of new food sources. Information gathered by the FA469 research probe suggested that Gallinar would provide ideal sites for the generation of protein-rich foodstuffs. The consortium lobbied for the system's colonization until the plan was accepted in 4393 AD. It seems unlikely that Gallinar met the Empire's expectations, as only the planets Benet and Acheron were ever developed as sources of food. However, the system also yields valuable processed chemicals and minerals.
Gallinar is under constant military surveillance from the Empire's long-range espionage satellites. Attempts are made to disrupt their readings, but it can be assumed that the Empire is able to gain significant quantities of classified information. Gallinar's defense systems are effective, and yet small-scale. The League of Free Worlds has historically relied on guerrilla tactics in all its military affairs. All other details are withheld.
Benet is a rock planet adjacent to the system's sun, Evan star. Although it was the first planet in the system to be colonized and housed the earliest operational rain-shine artificial weather systems, its name is now synonymous with the League of Free Worlds uprising. The Battle of Benet marked the League's successful defense of Gallinar in the face of a massive Empire onslaught. The League's huge growth can be traced back to this victory, as can many of its highly effective guerrilla warfare techniques. The planet has become a symbol of hope for all those loyal to the League of Free Worlds. Benet was colonized in 4405 AD. The aim was to create a highly controllable microatmosphere on the planet within which an infinite number of weather conditions could be created. Rainshine Inc. provided the artificial weather technology which was installed, although early models of their system proved only partially successful. Extensive testing had failed to detect an inbuilt bias towards tornado conditions, and a number of important personnel were literally blown off the planet's surface when a wind force limiter shut down in Era. Subsequent design modifications removed the problem, and the Rainshine system went on to become an efficient means of recreating ideal growing conditions for all known vegetation. Benet's biofarms still produce foodstuffs, although the means of production are now controlled by the League of Free Worlds. In addition, a number of the farms have now been given over to the testing of military equipment.
Under Empire control, Benet was defended by a trigger response network linked to a central intelligent execution node. This system has been maintained by the League, although its operation is not completely understood. Certain of the system's functions have remained inoperable, although it is still a highly efficient means of defending Gallinar's capital world.
It was originally hoped that Fortuna's chemical resources could be exported the short distance to Benet in order to drive the artificial weather systems which had recently been established there. Due to the presence of trace toxins, these chemicals proved unsuitable for use in conjunction with food production. However, they were well suited for use in engine fuel. Fortuna's chemical plants are now used to fuel League assault craft. Following colonization in 44-45 AD, a number of attempts were made to skim off surface gases from the outer layers of Fortuna. Several techniques were tried, but none offered the degree of fine control necessary to separate the valuable outer layer from the worthless underlayer. A number of research groups were dispatched to Fortuna. Attempts were made to calibrate the machinery correctly, but the only result was irreversible damage to the structure of the planet's surface. However, in 4451 AD, it was discovered that suction techniques were able to carry out the task effectively. Large areas of Fortuna were subsequently encased in vast suction bins which extracted only those gases which could be used in the manufacture of fuel. The League continues to produce engine fuel on Fortuna, although sophisticated recycling procedures have been introduced.
All Fortuna's chemiplants are fitted with infrabeam early warning detection systems. These are liable to suffer data corruption due to their age, although readings have never been known to modulate beyond acceptable levels. All other details are withheld.
Morpheus is a rock planet covered by vast mountain ranges which house large quantities of mineral-rich deposits. Extensive mining has taken place, although the tunnels and shafts which run beneath the planet's surface are now in danger of collapse. A program of remedial repairs is now underway. The mining colonies of Morpheus witnessed some of the fiercest uprisings against Empire control. For this reason, its history has been subject to extensive data wiping by the Empire. Indeed, Morpheus does not officially exist as far as the Empire is concerned. It is officially referred to only as a negative presence phenomenon. Morpheus was colonized in 4462 AD by a remotely operated landing vessel stocked with human embryos. It was the first planet to be colonized in such a manner. The embryos matured within the landing vessel until they were old enough to accept sensory stimulation and knowledge accumulation procedures. No other human visited the planet until 4481, by which time the programmed embryos were mature adults who had already begun establishing a mining colony. Despite the efforts of the Empire to ensure the population was correctly programmed, the Morpheans never accepted Empire control. They regarded themselves as natives of Morpheus only, and responded violently to Empire coercion. The mines were barricaded against incursion by Empire forces, and a series of conflicts set in progress, which ultimately helped establish the League of Free Worlds.
All information is withheld.
Planetary Observations. Acheron remains the only organic planet to have been discovered anywhere in the universe. It is not clearly understood how Acheron came to exist, although Empire scientists have speculated that since it is organic, it must have the potential to reproduce, and therefore there must be other such planets elsewhere. The planet's surface is made up of a dense vegetable matter which alters in color according to weather conditions. The presence of huge phosphorus lakes means that Acheron is never in darkness. Acheron was colonized in 4472 AD by a commercial operation called Future Food. Their brief was to establish Gallinar as the Empire's primary food exporter, a plan which dated back to the original colonization of the system. The Empire believed a commercial initiative would have more chance of success, and while the planet successfully sustained a number of productive biofarms, Future Food was unable to expand the operation to the rest of the system. Now supplying foodstuffs to planets loyal to the League of Free Worlds, Acheron has been a frequent target for Empire buzzcraft. The Colonial Navy's largest operation resulted in the destruction of an entire year's harvest, which devastated League morale. Acheron's defenses have subsequently been upgraded to principal status.
The bioorganic defense system installed on Acheron is linked to the planet's own cell structure. Consequently, certain defense functions are automatically operated if the planet's own ecosystem is tampered with in any way. Should a hostile force attempt to take over Acheron's biofarms, the planet itself will trigger the release of toxins, rendering all produce unusable.
Proteus is a rock planet supplying ore used in the manufacture of League flight craft. Its mining colonies are largely automated, as highly toxic dust is produced as part of the mining process. The mining facilities are housed in sealed chambers and are separated from the main population centers by large artificially generated electromotes. Any dust particles escaping from the mining chambers are drawn into the moat, where they are bombarded with grains of toughened diamond until they are obliterated. No failure of this system has ever been recorded, and Proteus is regarded as a desirable place to live and work. When Proteus was colonized in 4491 AD, it was enveloped in toxic dust clouds which circulated in the strong winds. Reports on the findings of research probe RD-316 revealed that the ore content of the planet was likely to be extremely high. Subsequent geological investigation by remote analysis devices proved this to be correct. It is not thought that the toxic materials which characterize much of Proteus's geology have ever proved problematic to colonists. Empire sources confirm that all mining structures were built by remote devices, and highly effective safety measures have been implemented at each stage of the colony's development. During the turmoil of the anti-Empire uprisings on Proteus, Empire forces attempted to reverse the action of the planet's electromotes in the hope that toxic material would be ejected back into the atmosphere and insurgents would be killed. However, fail-safe mechanisms built into the electromotes did not allow this to happen, although a number of Empire technicians were electrocuted in the attempt.
Proteus is currently a Category A weapon development site and plays a key role in the manufacture of League flightcraft. It is subject to a data blanketing order verified by the Father. No other details are available.
Midas is currently in the process of rebuilding its chemical processing industry following devastating attacks by the Colonial Navy. It is a mainly gas planet with a very high density and a large surface area. Vast areas of the planet were originally given over to residential settlements, with colonists commuting to other planets within the Gallinar System. Most of these regions were destroyed in the Navy bombing missions, and large numbers of people were killed. Temporary residences have since been constructed, although life remains very hard on Midas. The colonization of Midas was brought forward by 10 Earth years as an emergency measure to accommodate the growing number of colonists within the Gallinar System. The Committee for Expansionary Affairs had originally projected that large-scale residential support would be required in the system by 4520 AD. It was intended that this would be built alongside the chemical processing plants which were already planned for Midas. However, population growth within Gallinar proceeded at a far higher rate than expected. Emergency motions were passed within the Empire's Council for Colonization, allowing for the construction of cheap accommodation bays which proved to be of inadequate construction. They were improved once construction of the chemiplants was begun in 4519 AD. Virtually all surface construction was badly damaged during a series of Navy bombing raids during the 10th phase of the League's uprising.
The League has a very heavy armed presence on Midas, as current construction work is at an extremely vulnerable stage. Cloaked defense towers are located at strategic points, although precise coordinates are withheld. Deep bunker constructions are present within the dense gas outer layers. Approaching craft pass through a hostility detection blanket, which triggers the appropriate response from ground forces.
Galatea is a mainly gas planet adjacent to the outer rim of the Gallinar System. The final planet in the system to be colonized, it now houses a number of League military installations appropriated from the Empire. Originally a colonial Navy early warning outpost, it now serves primarily as an observation post for the League, although operation of the planet's inbuilt hardware is yet to be fully understood. Galatea was not actually discovered until the colonization of Gallinar was well underway. Its cycle round Evan star correlates precisely with the movement of Midas. The planet therefore remained hidden until its gravitational pull was detected in 4469 AD. Colonized as a Navy early warning outpost in 4517, the planet continues to operate a sophisticated early warning system on behalf of the League. Unfortunately, when the installations were seized from Empire control in the Great Navy Retreat of 4660, a number of security passcodes were lost. Consequently, about 25% of Galatea's hardware remains inoperable. Attempts to override security mechanisms are liable to result in the planet's self-destruction. For this reason, only a limited number of League military volunteers are resident on the planet.
All details are withheld.
Diomedes System. Diomedes is a 7-planet solar system loyal to the League of Free Worlds. Containing some of the most fertile and beautiful worlds anywhere in the universe, Diomedes was colonized between 4341 and 4394 AD. Within a matter of years, it became clear to the Empire that the system represented one of its greatest natural resources. Diomedes now supplies the League with energy, food, and various manufactured goods. The gas planet of Elysium was targeted for colonization in the mid-4320s. Empire energy production was failing to meet target quotas, and it was known that the planet's proximity to the sun Ra would help boost its energy generation. No further colonization was planned. Speculative probes launched during the construction of Elysium's power plants revealed highly fertile soil samples taken from Bacchus and Artemis. Further planet surveillance followed, and in 4342, the decision was made to commence immediate colonization of the entire system. Following industrial unrest on Iris and the spread of resistance to Empire control within neighboring systems, Diomedes declared itself loyal to the League in the 6th phase of the uprising.
As a wholly loyal solar system, the League supplies Diomedes with all available defense resources. However, the system relies on the intense commitment of its people and remains short of essential military hardware. Specific details necessarily carry a Class 4D Optimum Restriction Order.
Elysium is a predominantly gas planet surrounded by orbital power plants and a number of heat-blocked residential compounds. The Empire originally attempted to encase the entire planet within a suspended heat-resilient exoskeleton, although this project eventually proved unworkable and only the base support structures remain. These are now used as off-planet docking bays by the League. Elysium was colonized in 4341 AD as a site for the generation of solar energy. The initial influx of colonists refused to work due to the disorientating effect of the planet's rapid rotation. The change from darkness to light proved too frequent for the human metabolism. A self-regulating permaskin was developed by Magirap Industries, an Empire-sponsored company involved in the manufacture of micro-thin heat deflectors for flight craft. When worn, this body covering and headset created a day-night changeover sequence independent of actual planetary conditions. The original supply channels established by the Empire distributed Elysium's power to at least 12 different solar systems. Since the planet's population declared its loyalty to the League, these supply routes have been terminated. Most of the planet's energy is now used within Diomedes itself.
The central power distribution node on Elysium has been fitted with an impact reversal loop. In the event of a destructive strike targeted on Elysium, the planet's entire energy generation installation will feed back on the attacker. Unfortunately, due to a lack of testing, the reliability of this device is not known.
Bacchus is an extraordinarily fertile rock planet covered in a nutrient-rich, fibrous soil structure irrigated by naturally filtered water supplies. Until recently, the planet was responsible for many of the League's finest foodstuffs, although much of the food chain has now been blighted by the introduction of a mutant gene which has rendered the vegetation inedible. This gene is believed to have originated in an Empire laboratory. Colonized in 4349 AD, Bacchus was hailed by the Sentinel Daily Report as possessing the most perfect soil for the propagation of edible materials our scientists have ever studied. Other Empire propaganda ethercasts referred to the planet as a floating farm and the ball of dreams. Bacchus's original colonists were permitted to retain 0.0045% of their food output for their own use. The planet's yield was so large that this resulted in a vastly overfed population who became unwilling and unable to maintain the Empire's intensive working practices. Many of the processes were consequently mechanized, and a newly trained workforce put in place. The original colonists were removed, and subjected to enforced dietary restriction. Since Bacchus claimed loyalty to the League, it is believed that Empire bioresearch scientists have been attempting to poison the planet's food output. The recent introduction of a deadly mutant gene appears to prove this.
The defense of Bacchus has recently become the subject of much debate within the League, as the mutant virus infecting its food indicates that defenses have been breached. Data blanketing measures have been taken, and all distribution privileges withdrawn. All other details withheld.
Artemis is a ringed gas planet which specializes in the growth of highly nutritious vegetable produce. Like its neighbor Bacchus, Artemis is one of the most fertile spots in the known universe. Unlike its neighbor, it has so far resisted attempts by the Empire to introduce rogue elements into the food production process, and therefore remains one of the most important League bases. Artemis was colonized in 4362 AD, as it was known to possess a curious suspended soil mantle, which benefited from the presence of a heavy gas sublayer. Following problems with the working practices on neighboring Bacchus, a fully automated production process was introduced. However, after a series of major malfunctions, the Empire's Agricultural Commission introduced a resident workforce. They were given no rights to any of the food they produced. All goods were seized at the time of harvesting and removed. During the industrial uprisings on Iris, which turned the system's loyalties towards the League, the agricultural workers of Artemis dismantled all their machinery and destroyed an entire year's harvest. This seriously affected the AgCom's food budgets and caused famine in a number of isolated population centers. It remains one of the most famous acts of resistance in the League's history.
Since the poisoning of Bacchus's food cycle, the importance of maintaining an uncorrupted source of high-quality produce on Artemis has increased. All data referring to the planet's defenses has been withdrawn from the information domain. No further details available.
Loakun is a rock planet housing manufacturing facilities dedicated to the production of body-compatible biofabrics. The planet's infrastructure was established by commercial organizations supported by funds from the Empire's Bureau for Technological Advancement. All facilities are now controlled by the workforce on behalf of the League of Free Worlds. Loakun was colonized in 4367 AD as a commercial development zone for industries involved with technological research. The largest organization to set up a base on the planet was Magirap Industries, the corporation responsible for the protective body wrapping used by power plant workers on Elysium. They successfully bid for a development grant and transferred all research, design, and manufacturing departments to new premises on the planet. In return for Empire funds, Magirap committed themselves to the development of dedicated biofabrics which could effectively fuse with a human body to create a second skin. The results of the research were largely put to military use. However, following the anti-Empire uprisings, biofabrics have been adapted for use by workers on planets with hostile atmospheres, usually in connection with food production.
Under Empire control, Loakun was not heavily defended. A basic trigger response network has now been established by the League, although the planet's defenses remain heavily dependent on maintaining a passionate and committed population.
Iris is a mainly gas planet manufacturing much of the specialized plastics applied to official League enclosures in neighboring solar systems. Established as an extension of the Loakun Commercial Development Zone, the planet's industrial struggles were responsible for the first anti-Empire uprisings throughout Diomedes. The resident workforce remains highly committed to the League. With the success of the neighboring development zone on Loakun, the Bureau for Technological Advancement was anxious to capitalize on the region's concentration of research and manufacturing skills. An extension to the development zone was established on Iris in 4378 AD, and a number of high-technology commercial interests moved in. Timac Artifice was the first corporation to make a base on Iris. Responsible for advanced plastic systems to be used in artificial neural components destined for the military, Timac had a history of coercive labor control methods. Following their notorious production line cull, planet-wide rioting gave way to an organized uprising against the Empire. Inspired by rebellions elsewhere, it was the violent action on Iris which led to the entire Diomedes system turning to the League.
Iris's airspace is defended by a combination of beam-responsive Protasm missiles and blanket sky patrols by League activists. Scan deflectors are in constant operation, as are three-way bombardment warning sensors. Firepower remains medium to heavy.
Athena is a gas planet housing a large research community. It is involved in the investigation of zero gravity and its effects on living organisms. Originally testing Mark IV gravity disintegration weapons on behalf of the Empire's Destructive Capacity Group, the League now directs the research towards peaceful ends. The occupied surface of Athena is constructed from sheets of ready-fused porous aluminiac, commonly known as Jeffers compound. This is in recognition of the efforts of Commander Emeric Jeffer to build an observation platform on Athena, from which the rings of Iris could be studied. These rainbow-colored rings are one of the most beautiful natural phenomena in the universe. Commander Jeffer wanted them to be available for Empire colonists to see. He developed a material which could be suspended above the planet's gas surface, but was then dismissed and executed by Empire Command. His discoveries were then put to military use. Now dedicated to non-military scientific research on behalf of the League, the community on Athena revere Commander Jeffer as a man concerned with the pursuit of knowledge and beauty. The Empire could not allow such a man to continue in their ranks, and for this, he paid the ultimate price.
Athena's peaceful scientific community insists on a heavily cloaked defense presence. Low-noise engine casings and restricted impact deflectors are fitted to all craft patrolling the planet. However, there has been no reduction in the League's capacity to defend Athena. All other details are withheld.
Gratifa is a heavily forested rock planet manufacturing hover vehicles for civilian use. Its forest regions were originally used as recreation areas for high-ranking Empire officials, while vast expanses were cleared for the construction of industrial manufacturing plants. These were occupied by private corporations, but are now dedicated to the League of Free Worlds. Colonized in 4394 AD, Gratifa was the final planet in the Diomedes system to be taken by the Empire. It was zoned into industrial and recreational areas. The beautiful forest regions were populated by Empire officials who would be allocated a rest period on the planet as a reward or incentive. Clearance work began on the industrial zones in 4395. Prefabricated manufacturing plants were established alongside low-grade residential estates for the on-planet workforce. In common with a number of Diomedes' other industrial centers, industrial unrest spread from the planet Iris, resulting in a mass shutdown of all Gratifa's commercial properties. The recreational zones were subjected to sporadic arson attacks, which left large areas of forest burnt away. These areas are now used as test circuits for the civilian hover vehicles which are developed on the planet. All means of production on Gratifa are now controlled by the League of Free Worlds.
Gratifa is shielded by anti-incursion deflectors and a number of D-4RX response bolts appropriated from Empire weapon dumps. Data is subject to a Code 7 restriction specific to planets with high civilian populations. Military information is low to medium. Privileged access only.
Diomedes System. Alpha Centauri System. Alpha Centauri was the first solar system outside Sol to be colonized. Expansion beyond the home system was essential for the nascent empire, as its practice of raiding planets and extracting all usable resources was rapidly exhausting those planets it colonized. The system is now experiencing a vicious civil war between planets loyal to the Empire and those whose loyalties lie with the League of Free Worlds. The warp hole from Sol was breached in 4175 AD, and the planet Erato was colonized the same year. The final planet to be colonized was Vergia in 4234, although by this time the Empire was already planning expansion much further afield. The current civil war has repercussions for both the Empire and the League, as the system's proximity to Sol makes it of great strategic importance. Data traps have collected a number of encoded briefings detailing the Empire's concern over the future of Alpha Centauri. Chief amongst these was Memo X33RTY, which clearly stated that obliteration of the entire system would be considered if it fell to the League.
Alpha Centauri is generally heavily defended by the Empire. However, the League has the advantage of controlling a number of bases and some hardware within the system. Detailed information regarding Empire activities is available, although decoy data transmissions are known to be frequent.
Erato is a rock planet housing mineral mines and a number of Navy installations which have been destroyed by vandalism. The population of Erato is loyal to the League of Free Worlds. Despite frequent raids from the adjacent Empire's stronghold of Deucalion, a military cell structure established during the early phase of the uprising seems capable of defending the planet with great effect. Erato was colonized in 4175 AD, following a successful breach of the warp hole from the Sol system. It is probable that the first attempt to reach Erato resulted in the destruction of the pioneer craft Pilgrim Father, although Empire Command issued a blackout order banning the circulation of this information. A number of hijacked memos allude to the signing of an official secrecy document ordering the non-disclosure of unspecified information. This is thought to refer to the swearing-in of a new crew and the dispatch of a replacement pioneer craft. During the 7th phase of the anti-Empire uprising, all military installations on Erato were seized by groups of miners who had been forced to live underground for up to 9 Earth years at a time. They destroyed all signs of Empire rule and compelled the resident forces to leave. Erato has been a center for League resistance since this time.
Erato has developed such an advanced network of military cells that it is now impossible for any one person on the planet to know the names of more than 2 other people. In this way, the League sympathizers on Erato have successfully defended themselves against infiltration by the Empire. They also refuse to pass on detailed information to the League, fearing that it may fall victim to espionage.
Deucalion is a large rock planet which remains loyal to the Earth Empire. It has developed as an exporter of foodstuffs, in particular of genetically purified cattle strains which are reared in modified biofarms. League scientists have previously made ambitious attempts to alter the genetic makeup of these cattle, the aim being to introduce poison-producing glands which would render the animals worthless as food. These efforts have so far proved unsuccessful. Deucalion was colonized in 4186 AD, following the successful landing on Erato 11 Earth years previously. Communication links between Sol and the new colonies in Alpha Centauri initially proved problematic. There were frequent network crashes which hindered the establishment of the basic colonial infrastructure. Material supplies were often late as request memos went astray. On Deucalion, a number of early colonists starved to death in a remote camp well away from the base landing zone. Their distress messages were deflected by an aerial buffer caused by the planet's low air pressure. Their presence was not suspected until the remnants of the message were detected on Earth itself 76 years later. Deucalion's biofarms house genetically modified cattle bred for food. Experimentation to develop the optimum genetic mix continues on the planet. However, it is believed that this research is also used for military purposes.
As a vital link in Sol's food supply chain, Deucalion is defended by a combination of airborne and ground-based response systems. Certain information suggests that Deucalion is more heavily defended than it initially appears to be. This may indicate that military activity takes place on the biofarms, as well as conventional food production.
Hesta is a rock planet primarily concerned with the manufacture of information technology for civilian use. The planet's surface is coated in a silicate compound, which results in a completely smooth and dust-free environment. It is not unknown for colonists on Hesta to suffer an extreme aversion to these clinical surroundings. This condition is termed Hesta's retort. Specially adapted footwear is worn by all Hesta's colonists, as the lack of friction on the smooth surface renders conventional footwear useless. Hesta was colonized in 4203 AD by representatives of Digicorpus, creators of civilian computer equipment based on military technology. The clean, dust-free environment offered by Hesta was unsuitable for many of the Empire's requirements. The Bureau for Commercial Development, therefore, invited interested commercial parties to submit plans. Digicorpus established the first technological village on Hesta in 4205 AD. They were quickly followed by Neverwhere, Hex Inductors Inc., and TRQX. There does not appear to have been any extraction of Hesta's natural silica-rich deposits. All raw materials are imported from elsewhere in the Empire. Extensive intelligence gathering has failed to reveal any military presence on Hesta. All the planet's exports appear to be strictly for civilian use.
Despite the apparent absence of military installations on the surface of Hesta, the planet has proved impossible for League forces to attack successfully. It is unclear why this should be. However, it should be assumed that heavily cloaked airborne defenses are present along with highly successful jamming signals.
Ballistus is a ringed gas planet loyal to the League of Free Worlds. It follows a so-called jagged orbit. Consequently, it has been known to lurch violently at various points in its history. This occurs around once every 300 Earth years, although there seems to be no useful pattern which can suggest when this might happen again. The lurch has occurred once since colonization. Attempts have been made to buffer the planet against damage in the future, but scientists are not confident that these measures have anything other than token value. Ballistus was colonized in 4214 AD as a source of raw gases for power. Basic extraction facilities were established within 1 Earth year, which tore away the planet's outer surface. The high rate of extraction led to severe shrinkage by 4224, and Empire scientists were brought in to suggest ways in which Ballistus could be recycled. Research showed that if waste gas products from certain types of engine were collected and pumped back into the planet, it would begin to reform itself and would, in time, return to its original state. A recycling policy was put in place, and this system continued until the planet's colonists declared themselves loyal to the League. It was then discovered that the planet had grown too much and was in danger of upsetting the balance of the entire system. Measures are now underway to reverse this process.
Ballistus has been the target of a number of sporadic and violent incursions by the Empire. It has been defended by the use of toxic waste products generated by the planet's core industry. These have successfully driven back several Empire attack waves since they are known to cause genetic mutation. Unfortunately, it is likely that the League Defense Forces had inadequate protection when they handled the toxic waste. This situation is yet to be confirmed.
Calliopeia is a rock planet scarred by deep lesions. These were caused by so-called razor falls during the early phase of its evolution. These razor falls consisted of sharp, blade-like meteors which crashed into the planet, gouging out tall, thin valleys which now house scientific research establishments. Calliopeia is loyal to the League of Free Worlds. Colonized in 4219 AD, the deeply scarred surface of Calliopeia proved unsuitable for conventional building practices. However, the Empire's Construction and Installation Battalion developed a technique of hanging thin, single-corridor constructions from the valley top. These were then stabilized by a counterweight system. The quiet, secure environment proved to be ideal for the establishment of a research laboratory network. Virtually every valley on the planet now houses such a research center. Since the scientific community on Calliopeia refused to continue working for the Empire, the League has established a number of defense positions on the planet's outer surface. The research network continues to carry out scientific work, being concerned primarily with the development of electroplasma technologies.
Calliopeia's defenses are committed to protecting the scientific community, as the fruits of their research are proving invaluable to the League of Free Worlds struggle. Surface bases have been constructed on a flatbed basis, while air defenses are fully stretched, dealing with the frequent incursions by Empire craft sent from adjacent Vergia.
Vergia is a rock planet loyal to the Earth Empire. It produces a valuable liquid ore which has been used throughout the Empire in various heavy industrial processes. The planet also houses a large military presence, briefed to engage League defenses throughout Alpha Centauri as frequently as possible. It is also likely that a number of the ore mines are now prison bays holding captured League personnel. Vergia was colonized in 4234 AD as a holding compound for hardware to be used in the Empire's continued expansion. Inventories deposited in the waste directory of the Empire's Central Digital Forum list flight craft, artillery, recreation facilities, and staff uniforms among equipment deposited on the planet. Boreholes in Vergia's surface were discovered in 4240. Geological investigation revealed the presence of the valuable liquid ore which is now mined so extensively. Subsequent digimemos to Empire Command recommended the installation of large-scale mining facilities. Vergia now plays a key role in the Empire's industrial infrastructure.
Vergia is defended by a neural trigger system sunk into the planet's core. It is responsible for most of the anti-League aggression within the Alpha Centauri system. Large military bases house a self-contained command structure with the power to make autonomous military decisions. All attacks should proceed with caution, as capture will inevitably result in torture and execution.
Alpha Centauri System. Draco System. The Draco System lies at the heart of the Earth Empire, housing large-scale weapon and flight craft manufacturing facilities. The 6 planets are lit by 2 suns, Helios and Hecate, which are believed to have mood-altering properties. While this may sound unlikely, neural data reports held by the Body for Objective Exploration suggest that empirical evidence highlights a genuine mood shift phenomenon linked to the two suns. Draco was colonized between 4252 and 4321 AD with the intention of establishing a core supply base for Empire military operations. With the support of Group Commander J4TM and finance from the Militia Deposit Foundation, an exploratory cluster was dispatched to Draco with orders to assess its suitability. Rapid colonization was recommended, and a number of specialisms divided between the 6 planets. Data scans reveal that Draco is experiencing significant unrest within the civilian population, particularly on the planets Eos, Selene, and Eurydice. Despite a number of internment orders and the banning of all workplace gatherings, harsh working conditions have resulted in a non-cooperative workforce. Problem areas are now being subjected to forced repopulation.
Draco plays a major role in supplying the colonial navy with arms and flight craft. As such, it benefits from an X4 defense rating and receives highly charged generator boosts, which strengthen its shielding. Navigational equipment may prove unreliable due to the presence of 2 suns. Flights within the proximity of Draco should be supported by analog sky readers, in addition to conventional compass systems.
Harmonia is a rock planet which exports cybernetic devices to the colonial navy. Research bunkers are located within the deeply mined dry seabed region, while the manufacturing plants are distributed across the planet's surface. Due to its proximity to the sun, Helios, coolant fluids are constantly pumped around Harmonia via a fibrous network of microtubes known locally as the skin. During the planet's early colonization, a portion of the skin split open, causing a highly localized ice age. An entire pioneer battalion was frozen to death. Harmonia was colonized in 4252 AD on the orders of the Tsar's private office. Internal core data documents argued for the creation of a highly centralized arms manufacturing base defended by a chain response system. Opponents of the plan suggested that such a base would be vulnerable to attack. The Tsar, however, insisted that the plan should go ahead in the Draco system. The opponents were removed from office and dispatched to an off-world prison bay in Alpha Centauri. Harmonia has supplied most of the colonial navy with the Snatch Reflex Enhancer, a device which boosts average human response times by a factor of 10. Current research being undertaken on the planet aims to adapt this technology for use in a sensory enhancer, which would improve all 5 senses by the same order.
There are known to be no-hack anti-intruder networks controlling all aspects of Harmonia's defense. These have been optimized for the Crystal 2 operating system. Infrabeam triggers are fitted at all entry points and manned forceware craft are on permanent standby. Be aware that all installations on Harmonia are owned by the military and are defended accordingly.
Gallinar is a rock planet which houses an unknown number of military research laboratories. Although certain of their activities are known, blanket security arrangements appear to be in force on the planet. Laboratory locations are not known, as they appear to have been constructed from a beam-deflective material which causes scanning devices to feed back in an nth-generation loop. However, information leakage retrieved from a rogue wave filter suggests that the planet's primary research is concerned with robotics, specifically the development of a highly efficient non-human soldier. Gallinar was colonized in 4270 by the Land Excursion Division of the Colonial Navy. It was immediately isolated from the planet Harmonia by the construction of an air gate, which causes extreme signal disruption. The intention was to deny the planet's existence even to other members of the Empire's forces. This plan was maintained for several Earth years. Colonists initially believed they had simply been moved to a new area of Harmonia. Since the truth was revealed by a malfunctioning binary message reader in 4279, the Empire has reluctantly acknowledged the planet's existence. However, it continues to insist that only basic waste disposal and skyway maintenance activities are undertaken on Gallinar. It is clear this is not the case, as military-coded research reports have been regularly intercepted. Unfortunately, they remain unreadable.
Extreme shielding and signal disruption devices are in use across Gallinar. A Mark II trigger node has been detected, but the use of beam-deflecting materials makes intelligence gathering difficult. Information avoidance procedures are in operation. Information may be unreliable.
Janus, known as the two-faced planet amongst its resident workforce, is a rock planet scarred by frequent rock-bearing winds, which have gouged vast channels into its surface. It now houses a huge collection of weapon factories specializing in the manufacture of the T-5 Avalanche strike craft. They are sheltered from the extreme weather conditions by leaning platforms constructed from a bauxilic compound known as Janus dust. An attempt was made to colonize Janus in 4285 AD. However, the landing crew were killed in suspicious circumstances when they attempted to report one of their number for insubordination. Legal text stored in the Empire's data vaults suggests that as soon as the landing craft entered the zone lit by the sun Hecate, uncharacteristic mood changes overcame the crew members. While largely anecdotal, there is also some limited scientific evidence connecting Hecate with extreme mood fluctuation. The planet was successfully colonized in 4289, and since then, all colonists have been required to wear protective clothing when entering the Hecate zone. Certain information suggests that the system's other sun, Helios, also has mood-altering properties. Although as these are thought to be positive, no attempts are made to minimize their possible effect.
Standard defense procedures are in effect on Janus, although they are boosted by the presence of a demon hex generator. Scans reveal prolonged signal disruption, although this appears to close down as Janus passes through the shadow cast by adjacent planets. This may assist attack forces.
Eos is a rock planet which specializes in the production of high-grade weaponry. While it plays a key role in the Empire's military strategy, there appears to be continuing problems with the planet's workforce. High levels of secrecy and coercive labor control techniques have resulted in occasional acts of sabotage by workers. The Empire is known to be continually working to deal with this situation. Eos was colonized in 4298 AD as part of what had become known as the Draco Military Hardware Project. It had been scheduled to accommodate factories manufacturing suborbital weapons and scent-guided vapor missiles. However, as these prefabricated installations were being shipped in, a number of extremely valuable natural resources were discovered. These included the muscle relaxant Tranquilex and the injectable truth compound Comitom, both of which occur in concentrated form. Small-scale mining facilities now operate alongside the weapon factories in order to extract these materials. Industrial unrest is common on Eos. It has been suggested that the planet's proximity to Hecate is the cause of this. However, the Empire is reluctant to leave due to its heavy investment in the planet and the valuable resources still widely available.
Covert anti-personnel activities are continuously in operation on Eos. These are intended to suppress the planet's own population, but they also threaten attacking forces. Systematic neural scans are carried out remotely on all approaching craft. If aggressive tendencies are detected, automated pinpoint missile devices will engage.
Selene is a ringed gas planet operating an information dispersal system which results in highly erratic data scanning. For this reason, the nature of activity on Selene is not known in detail. However, it would appear to be primarily a research base. There are also known to be a number of basic gas mining colonies suspended above the planet's surface, which experience occasional industrial unrest. Selene was colonized in 4309 AD after a rush order was imposed by the Tsar's office. It was felt that the colonization of Draco was not proceeding at the required pace. Research staff were transferred from various locations across the Empire and briefed to investigate the development of automated orbital defense grids. The progress made as a result of this research is not known. It was also found that subsurface gases could be broken down into a number of valuable materials. These are now mined on Selene using hastily built mining installations located next to enforced habitation compounds. The colonists who live and work in these areas are known to be disruptive, and the cause of frequent raids by the Empire's Industrial Police Division.
Selene is believed to be heavily defended, although intense scanning fails to produce any reliable readings. No other details are known.
Eurydice is a rock planet which supplies ore to other planets within the Draco system. As a major center for large-scale mining, the planet suffers from industrial problems similar to those experienced on Eos and Selene. However, the Empire has rejected several proposals to leave the planet as the natural resources remain valuable. Eurydice was colonized in 4321 AD by conscripts from Selene's mining installations. Contemporary reports detail a number of atrocities inflicted on the colonial population, including the so-called Night of Pain and the Last Emasculation. The Tsar's office was known to want urgent completion of all construction works. It was hoped that these violent methods would have the desired effect. The Empire is still attempting to cope with a legacy left by use of these methods. The workforce frequently sabotaged the industrial process, and military personnel have been known to suffer extreme assaults. The League has made a number of attempts to destabilize the situation further, although these have had negligible success.
Eurydice is patrolled by heat-shielded barrier craft and land-air docking ships. A dual-direction observation network surrounds the planet as a defense against attack from the air and from within the mining installations themselves.
Draco System. Sol System. Sol is the home system of the Earth Empire. Its importance to the Empire cannot be overestimated, despite the fact that most of its natural resources have been exhausted. Without exception, all colonies in Sol and beyond exist to support life on Earth. There is evidence of major information cleansing throughout the Sol system. Strategic information may therefore prove to be unreliable. Colonization of the Sol system was completed within 140 years, following the Empire's arrival on Mars in 3095 AD. Expansion beyond Earth was essential due to the depletion of resources. Following the colonization of Pluto in 4134 AD, the Caucus for Exploratory Affairs insisted that expansion beyond Sol must be investigated. Internal memos confirm that Sol was close to exhaustion. Early probe reports suggested the possibility of sustaining a colony in the Alpha Centauri system. This was confirmed by a research team from the DGU Corporation in 4140 AD. Initial attempts to breach the warp hull led to spontaneous hardware burnup, although this information was blacked out by the military command. Freighters and militia subsequently breached the warp hull in 4175 AD.
The Sol system is currently thought to be almost impenetrable. Its core defenses are unknown, as scanning operations consistently fail to produce known readings. Frequency range projections phase without warning, leading us to believe that the system is running a warp induction loop. Extreme caution essential. The entire Empire is dedicated to the defense of Sol.
Pluto is a virtually derelict rock planet on the edge of the Sol system. The surface is marked by quarries and mine installations. Biosphere remains can be seen in all quarters. Only a handful of operational biospheres remain. These are subject to frequent vandalism. Occasional human activity has been detected, although the presence of military or law enforcement personnel is negligible due to the hazardous nature of the planet's surface. Most of the current population are of criminal extraction. It seems likely that the Bureau for Punitive Affairs regards Pluto as a punishment zone. Biospheres of the same design as those used on Venus were established on Pluto in 4134 AD. However, internal memos reveal that a large gravitational discrepancy was discovered following completion of the colony's basic infrastructure. This resulted in major atmospheric leakage, which rendered the planet uninhabitable for 7 Earth years as repairs were made. By the mid-4140s, extreme body disfigurement was noted on those working in Pluto's mines. Dr. J. Swartza noted, near-surface elements seem to contain anthrosic toxins which cause severe skin withdrawal. There were controlled evacuations from most of the colony, although criminal elements were still brought in. They were forced to continue scouring the planet for usable resources, suffering hideous disfigurement in the process. This practice is still believed to be occurring.
Pluto is not defended as heavily as other planets in the Sol system, although law enforcement craft scan the area frequently. Empire operations are more concerned with the non-escape of those prisoners resident on the planet than attack from outside.
Neptune is one of the most important planets in the Solar System, as it houses the Colonial Navy's early warning outpost. This will trigger immediate retaliation should the system come under attack. It is a gas planet occupied by military installations and an indeterminate number of human personnel. Certain binary links traced to a hyperdump on the Earth's moon contain information suggesting that the planet is entirely unmanned. However, this is contradicted by data reports gathered from undisclosed sources close to Empire Command. It is likely to be the case that Neptune is the subject of a massive misinformation campaign. Neptune was colonized in 4115 AD. A number of probes had already been dispatched beyond the Solar System in an effort to establish whether there was any immediate threat to the system from outside sources. No data was received to suggest that Sol was under danger from other life forms. However, internal discussion documents already confirmed that if the Empire continued its policy of colonization, resistance could be expected. The increasing militarization of the Empire reflected its growing use of oppressive population control techniques throughout its colonies. When these techniques were backed by advanced information cleansing, they could be executed without the knowledge of the colonists. The further the Empire stretched, however, the harder it would be to control these colonial populations.
All attempts to ascertain defense levels on Neptune have been unsuccessful. However, we can be certain they are vast. As a Class 1 military establishment, Neptune is protected by a self-generating ether veil of the type used by Empire Command itself. All attacks should be considered of negligible use.
Uranus is a gas planet housing the Colonial Navy Academy. Now depleted of all resources, the planet is still of immense value to the Empire due to its massive military training infrastructure and concentration of military recruits. It is believed that training for a senior position within the Colonial Navy takes up to 47 Earth years. However, training is carried out on a shift system, so that only 7% of the entire Academy membership is present on Uranus at any one time. Persistent scanning has failed to reveal how such large numbers of recruits are transported. Chemical extraction facilities were established on Uranus in 4091, although the planet proved unsuitable for protracted excavation. The techniques used on Saturn resulted in a number of small-scale explosions which injured senior Empire commanders. The extraction plants were closed down shortly after these incidents. However, the Defense Bureau proposed a basic military training site on Uranus in 4098. It is believed that the growing threat of terrorism on Saturn was giving cause for concern. The site was subsequently awarded Academy status by the Anti-Insurgency Council in 4115 AD. Potential students are selected using brain scanning procedures which detect the presence of a certain chromosome deformity believed to indicate aptitude in military situations.
Uranus benefits from a vast infra-network trigger detection facility, which makes all approaches highly dangerous. It has not been possible to simulate these conditions, and therefore all projections are highly unstable. Cloaked attack may activate responses throughout the entire Solar System.
Saturn is a large ringed gas planet with a small quantity of very valuable chemical resources. Sky cities, similar to those used on Jupiter, are suspended above the planet's surface. Frequent personnel drops are made using self-propelled carriers which skim the outer gas wall and extract the chemical elements by a centrifugal generator. However, internal political problems within the Saturn Residential Committee have led to supplies from the planet fluctuating dramatically. For this reason, the Empire no longer regards Saturn as a reliable source of raw materials, despite the value of those resources which are successfully exported. Saturn was colonized in 4076 AD after the Johnson probe confirmed the presence of certain valuable inert gases within the surface levels. Sky cities were developed using cantilever techniques pioneered on Jupiter, although the designs were substantially modified following Jupiter's catastrophic Sky City disaster. Elements within the labor force on Saturn refused to accept that any alterations had been made to the design, and distributed literature claiming that the Sky Cities were death traps. A number of anonymous digimems were logged at Anti-Corruption HQ, threatening terrorist action unless Saturn was evacuated immediately. No evacuation took place, and despite the absence of any apparent weakness in the Sky City design, terrorist acts remain commonplace on Saturn. Consequently, anti-insurgency operations are intense.
The Empire regards the current political situation on Saturn as highly dangerous, despite the fact that the population is loyal. Factions within the population are highly volatile. The planet is therefore very heavily defended. Anti-personnel capabilities are exceptional.
Jupiter is a large gas planet housing some of the first sky cities built by the Empire. Most of these cities are now obsolete in design, although they are still heavily populated and hold symbolic value for the Empire. The planet's moons have been extensively mined for core minerals used in the creation of the first interstellar drives. 5 of the original 18 moons have since fragmented to asteroids through overmining. All bar 3 of the remainder have been abandoned. Initial civil unrest following the 4091 Sky City disaster has been quelled. Population control is in effect. Due to the gaseous nature of the planet's surface, initial colonization used experimental sky cities. After 8 years of successful use, material stresses were discovered, but internal memos since uncovered reveal that the population was not informed. Internal binary calls logged at 34, 21, 66, 45 reported the collapse of Jupiter's Sky City 493. 57% of Jupiter's population was killed. Memo traced to the Bureau for Labor Control admitted, material stresses are not unknown in structures of this type. City collapse may be endemic. Expendable populations only to be installed. Due to the importance of the moon mining industry for the expanding empire, intensive research programs were established to develop more stable upper atmosphere installations. At the present time, these subsequent designs have proved acceptable.
Jupiter is heavily defended. Lunar mining installations are armed with industrial plasma cannons. The lack of a resident attack fleet makes fast, cloaked attacks feasible. Support from other Sol planets is likely, though fast attacks should be possible before major reinforcements arrive.
Mars, still often referred to by the archaic term the Red Planet, was the first planet to be colonized. The population is fiercely loyal to the Empire. It is not certain why this population is maintained, since Mars's resources were depleted several centuries ago. The pyramid structures which cover the planet's surface are not seen anywhere else in the Empire due to their inefficient heat distribution. However, they became a symbol of successful colonization and are maintained on Mars for propaganda reasons. Following major advances in atmosphere simulation technology, the first colony settled on Mars in 3095 AD. Defecting Empire officials have raised the possibility that the first wave of colonists suffocated after a respiratory system unaccountably closed down in 3096. If this is so, the Empire has successfully kept this information from the current population, who regard themselves as chosen people descended from the original pioneers. It is known that the Empire practices gerrymandering procedures to maintain the fierce loyalty of the Mars colony. Mind-wiping technology is used to create a population highly susceptible to suggestion, although the reasons are unknown. No resources remain on Mars.
Mars is a heavily defended planet, which makes use of a number of rapid deployment technologies. It is suspected that the large and fanatical population may be trained in extreme suicide techniques.
Venus is a rock planet housing defunct biospheres and mine installations. It once offered employment to millions of colonists. The original boom planet, Venus was established as a colony following the success of the first mines on Mars. Its exported minerals were used in high-quality stress support systems. Now derelict, it was once believed that Venus had been demolished by Empire Command. Its disappearance was, in fact, caused by experiments in planetary shielding. Although there were already a few prototype biospheres on Earth, the colonization of Venus in 4024 AD saw them constructed from prefabricated materials for the first time. The success of shaft G446.X, a basic ore mine, led to the rapid expansion of the colony. Its success resulted in the site being vastly oversubscribed by potential colonists. The selection of workers was carried out by DNA scanning, a technique still used by some Empire corporations despite it being discredited. And successful colonists became the highest paid workers in the early Empire. However, the high rate of extraction led to the rapid depletion of resources. Colonists were afflicted by health problems, and many were culled in the 4098 Biosphere Clearance Program.
Venus has been the site of a number of military maneuvers since the closure of most of its mines. Various anti-intelligence techniques have been tested in its vicinity. Consequently, it is extremely heavily defended. Navigational equipment may be subject to extreme interference. Proximity to Earth means that counterattack is likely to be instantaneous.
Often referred to by Empire scientists as the Powerball, Mercury provides one of the few examples of the utilization of a renewable energy source by the Empire. The Sun provides light and heat. Orbital installations generate power. Shielding technology was specifically developed to protect the new installations based around Mercury from the Sun. This technology has since been adapted throughout the colonies for military use, since it enables reflected heat to be transmitted as a digital jamming code, rendering many scanning devices useless. Mercury's precise colonization date is currently unknown, although the idea of establishing a colony was first raised by the Encon Committee in 3025 AD. It was thought that solar energy collected on the surface of Mercury could solve all energy problems on Earth. No further colonization was envisaged. Data traps reveal that commercial bodies such as Dector Mining Inc. and Testex Mineral Extraction orchestrated a smear campaign against the committee, and the plans were abandoned. They forged information supporting reinvestment in fossil fuels, despite the absence of any such fuel on Earth. Earth's mining conglomerates collapsed in the particle bribery scandal of 3076 AD. Mercury's colonization followed sometime later.
Mercury is no longer of immense value to the Empire, as its industrial constructions are of obsolete design, and it is proving costly to maintain. Factions within the Empire have previously considered detonating Mercury. However, political opposition was intense. We must assume Mercury is as well defended as the rest of Sol.
The Earth is the Empire's seat of government. It is of immense symbolic value, as well as being the center of the Empire's military and political power. It is a rock planet, largely covered in water, which was once rich in resources. Systematic extraction of all sources of fuel have left much of the planet sterile, although its wealth remains vast due to the removal of resources from the colonies. All human life can be traced back to origins on Earth. The colonies were established to support life on the planet once its own natural resources have been completely exhausted. The discovery of the drug fluoraldic thorophosphate, commonly known as anti-age, boosted the average age of the Earth's population within a generation. Resource depletion reached epidemic proportions concurrently. Starvation and chronic overcrowding followed. Satellite holding bays were built to house excess humanity in barbaric conditions. Insurrection was anticipated, resulting in a massive expansion of the Earth's military and law enforcement capabilities. However, the artificial atmospheric simulation procedure, perfected by Oxylex Corp in 3046, led to the possibility of habitable colonies on Mars. The Institute for Off-Planet Development stated, "The Martian surface will lend itself to the extraction procedures used on Earth for so many years. Now our workers can live there too. We must proceed with this project, or die."
Earth's defenses are the subject of much debate. Hidden matter shielding is likely. Intensity readings are off the scale, therefore very little information can be provided. All other factors are unknown.